So the blood supply to the midgut and hindgut come from two branches of the abdominal aorta, the superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery. So when thinking about these arteries, I think it's probably easiest just to draw them out. So forgive the poor drawings, but I'm just going to draw in the abdominal aorta. So I've got the abdominal aorta here. At the top here, it's just where it pierces the diaphragm. So just around here. The celiac trunk is one of the first branches. I'm just going to do that in pink, and from a previous video we know it gives off three main branches: the splenic, the left gastric and the common hepatic. So we won't go into more detail here, but this is the celiac trunk. Just going to draw in the pancreas now. So remember, my drawings are rarely to scale, but let's give you some idea of a pancreas. We can make this a bit oh dear, it's going to take me ages. Hold on, let me just colour this in. So let's also just put a bit of the duodenum in. So duodenum's coming round here, and then we've just joins with the jejunum there, so the jejunum sort of starts around here. The superior mesenteric artery comes off at about the level of L1, behind the sort of neck of the pancreas. So it comes out, so this is behind, and then it sort of emerges and then goes slightly above the uncinate process of the pancreas. So this is the uncinate part of the pancreas. By the way, my drawings, which I said wasn't to scale, really isn't to scale, because actually when we're thinking in real terms, the celiac trunk and the origin of the superior mesenteric artery is really sort of a centimetre or so. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about going to a pro-section or looking at this kind of in a real cadaver. The superior mesenteric artery comes off under the neck of the pancreas, usually above the uncinate process of the pancreas, and then over the third part of the duodenum. At this point we perhaps need to just zoom out a little bit so we can get a better sort of view of what's happening overall. So if we just continue to draw the superior mesenteric artery coming round here. Now once again, please remember the scale of this is loose. If we follow it down, just look at the branches to start with, and then we'll try and sort of get it to all make sense. So we have a branch coming off near the end called the ileocolic branch, so just draw that in, ileocolic. We have a branch coming off slightly earlier called the right colic, and a branch coming off even before that called the middle colic. Oops, wrong colour. So the middle colic coming off here. Now at this stage I think I'm just going to zoom out even just a tiny bit more and draw in some bowel, but of course there are loops of bowel, so this is not the entirety of the bowel, but just to give you an illustration of roughly what we're supplying. So if you can imagine, this is a little bit representing, say, the jejunum and ileum. Now obviously this is way too short, but it's giving you an idea. So this is the jejunum and ileum coming down to the cecum here, and the cecum perhaps will go slightly different colour. So we've got then our cecum as a slightly more distended sort of section here. It's the start of the large bowel, and then let's have our ascending colon coming up here, and our transverse colon and our descending colon. I'm going to have to draw this all in, so just give you an idea of where we're doing. And then we have a bit of a sigmoid colon, and then it goes down into our rectum. Once again, scale out the window, so just bear that in mind. So the superior mesenteric artery gives off branches to the jejunum, and these are not like straight off like this, but just give you sort of an example of how they go. They're sort of arcades. But if we go back and look at the ileocolic artery, which sort of actually takes a little dip round here, that ends up having a cecal sort of terminal branch and an ileal terminal branch. So if I just change my pen, so obviously we've got a cecal branch and an ileal branch here. The ileal branch will anastomose with the end of the superior mesenteric artery. You'll see different things in different books, but that's sort of generally how it goes. If we look at the right colic, well, the right colic will largely be involved in supplying the ascending colon, but as it approaches, it also gives off a sort of inferior and superior branch, and these branches make their way down and anastomose the inferior branch with the ileocolic artery, and we'll have a look what happens to the superior branch. But effectively, you are giving off branches to the ascending colon. Once again, they're not straight like this, but just to give you an idea of what they supply. Now if we look at this middle colic artery, and actually I've drawn it coming off way too much over to the right here, it's much more kind of directly up, but once again, if we look at this artery, let me get a bigger pen, this will then also have a left and a right branch here, and it'll supply the transverse colon up to kind of 2/3 of the way along, because remember that's where the midgut sort of ends, so you'll get branches sort of coming around here, all along here. So it does mainly the transverse colon, and the middle colic will come around and anastomose with the right colic here, so we've got sort of a continuous blood supply. So that's a very, very basic superior mesenteric artery kind of rundown. And if we look at it in very basic terms, this blood supply to the midgut has some main branches, really the ileocolic, the right colic, and the middle colic branches. So let's go on and talk about the blood supply to the hindgut. It's the inferior mesenteric artery, comes off the aorta around about the level of L3. I'm going to choose a slightly different colour here because we're going to get lost basically with all the kind of reddy colours. So let's try a greeny colour. So this comes off slightly to the left of centre, so around about here. So it comes down, and it gives off a left colic branch. The left colic branch comes off here, and then that has, let me just get a smaller pen, and that has an ascending portion which comes up here. We're giving off branches to the descending colon around here, and a descending branch that gives off branches here. Then we have some sigmoid branches, but I just have to extend the inferior mesenteric artery down a little bit down here, and we'll get some sigmoid arteries coming off here by the sigmoid colon. And then as the inferior mesenteric artery, or rather when it crosses over into the pelvis, and if we draw sort of an imaginary dotted line of the pelvis round about here, as the inferior mesenteric artery crosses over into the pelvis, it's actually renamed the superior rectal artery, and that is giving off branches to the rectum there. And all these branches actually have links to each other. Okay, whoops. So if we go back up to the left colic, and even the left colic up here will anastomose with the middle colic. So anastomose with the middle colic. So we've got all these connections, and these will be connected together, these will be connected together, these will be connected together like so. So we've got branches, and in this case of the inferior mesenteric artery, we have the left colic branch here, the sigmoid arteries here, and then the superior rectal artery, which is the continuation of the inferior mesenteric artery when it goes into the pelvis. So imagine this is the pelvis there. So what we end up with from all these anastomoses of the superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery, we eventually get this connection that I'm doing in pink that goes all around the midgut and hindgut. So we've got all these connections here by this pink dotted line, and we call this the marginal artery. And it's not an artery in itself in its own right, but it's a sum of all these anastomoses of these branches of the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. It's an important concept, the marginal artery. So that's just a very brief and basic introduction to the blood supply to the midgut and the hindgut. So in summary, the midgut is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery with its ileocolic, right colic and middle colic branches, and the hindgut is supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery, its main branches being the left colic, the sigmoid arteries, and then the superior rectal artery.